I wear two hats. I am a historian, tour guide guy, and I'm also a rabbi. So what I like to do when I present information is basically to try and combine the two. And I think it's appropriate at the end of, is it too loud, by the way, volume? Good, okay. Sounds very loud to me. I hate hearing myself speak. What I like to do is try and give maybe a little higher perspective. I think it's a great way to end the day, to try and put everything together, not just from the political perspective, but maybe from the traditional Jewish Torah perspective. And I think you'll see there's some very interesting points that we can see from the current political situation. The presentation is called "The Nation That Dwells Alone: Why the Whole World Picked on Tiny Israel." And while a lot of this information you may have seen in bits and pieces, I'm pretty sure you've never seen it put together this way. It's a pretty heavy talk. It could leave you depressed, but as Golda Meir said, pessimism is an emotion that Jewish people can never afford to have. So I won't leave you depressed. Even the darkest clouds of Jewish history, there's always a silver lining. There's some very powerful, proactive, positive message to this presentation, which we're going to see at the end. But to begin at the beginning, if you guys have studied anti-Semitism, and most people have, we appreciate that anti-Semitism is a very unique phenomenon. The horrible world of racism and intolerance is in a category all by itself. Dr. Bernard Lewis, who's Professor Emeritus Near Eastern Studies at Princeton University, he writes, "While hatred of Jews has many parallels and is unique, and its persistence and its extent, its potency and its virulence, its terrible final solution. Conventional prejudice and persecution can be very terrible, but they differ from anti-Semitism as conventional from nuclear war. The idea being is the world is full of racist, bigots, and intolerant people, but Jew hate is different for a number of reasons, and we know that it's plagued us throughout history. It's a phenomenon we've never been able to escape from, no matter where we've lived, any period, any situation, rich, poor, assimilated, separate." Dennis Prager and Joseph Solushkin, who wrote an excellent book, "Why the Jews?" Anyone heard of this book? It's a must-own book, by the way. I don't get a percentage of the royalties, but it's the single most important book written on anti-Semitism. They say hatred of Jews is humanity's greatest hatred. While hatred of other groups has always existed, no hatred has been as universal, as deep, or as permanent. So it's uniquely intense hatred we've never been able to escape. By the time we get to the end of the 19th century, having gone through centuries of horrendous persecution in Europe, we have the birth of what's called the Zionist movement. I'm sure we all know what that is. Modern Jewish nationalism. The overwhelming view of much of the early Zionist thinkers was, you know the reason why we're hated? All those ridiculous excuses aside, that we poison wells, kidnap Christian babies, use their blood to bake matzah, control the world's economy. Really, the real answer is we're not a normal nation. Every other nation in the world has a flag, a passport, an army, a port of refuge. We don't have those things. And when we do have those things, finally the world will accept us and anti-Semitism will cease. If you look at Herzl, who is not the founder of Zionism, but certainly one of the most important figures in creating a modern Jewish state, he writes in 1896, "The Jewish question," which is this whole issue of hatred and anti-Semitism, "still exists. It would be foolish to deny it. It exists wherever Jews have lived in perceptible numbers. It is a national question which can only be solved by making it a political world question to be discussed and controlled by the nations of the civilized world in council. A wondrous generation of Jews will spring up into existence. We shall live at last as free men on our own soil and die peacefully in our own home." You guys read the quote? You can almost cry when you read this quote. What's Herzl essentially saying? When we have a Jewish state, anti-Semitism will cease, and we'll finally live in peace with the nations of the world. Herzl died in 1904, over a century ago. Irony of ironies, what is the greatest single excuse for Jew hate on the planet Earth today? Zionism and the state of Israel. Don't get me wrong, it's not the cause. I'm sure you've heard enough of that today. But it's certainly not been the solution to getting the world to love us. But not only that, everything in Jewish history is quite unique and unusual. I do many, many talks on these topics. Jew hate is certainly in that category, and Israel bashing is also in a very unique category in the world. I'm going to show you now is a series of points. Pretty much each of them is going to begin with a statement. Israel is the only country in the world with that. And we're going to see 10. There's a lot more than 10, by the way. There's at least 20. But you need Prozac by the end of that. It's way too much. It's also going to take about 2 hours to do. But by the end, you'll see that the world's treatment of Israel puts Israel in a completely different category than any other country in human history, certainly any country in the world today. seen these points at different times and be aware of them, I'm pretty sure you've never seen them all together like you're going to see them now. And even though it's a very heavy, depressing, and even weird phenomenon, I'm not going to leave you depressed. We're going to flip it over and say, what can we learn from this very unusual, unique way that the world is treating Israel? So let's begin at the beginning. Israel is the only country in the world whose national identity has been labeled racist and illegal. What am I talking about? The famous UN resolution in 1975 declaring Zionism a racist, illegal ideology. Does everyone appreciate that's a unique event in human history, that a people's national identity was declared illegal? You can actually see the resolution here. Here it is, General Assembly, UN Resolution 3379, November 1975. And it says at the bottom, look at the last three lines. Zionism is a threat to world peace and security and calls upon all countries to oppose this racist and imperialist ideology. Here's the actual General Assembly resolution that determines that Zionism is a form of racism and racial discrimination. The only time in human history that a country's national identity has been declared illegal. One person saw the irony of this is Reverend Benjamin Nunes, who is the UN representative from Costa Rica, which is a very small country, which has a lot of affinity to Israel. But he sees how weird this is when he says, what a tragic paradox that the Jewish people, with its ideal of Zion, the greatest victims of racism and racial persecution throughout history, is now, by virtue of a draft resolution of the petrol majority, a racist people and a movement. By the way, a little less than 20 years later, this resolution was finally rescinded. That Israel was able to get the General Assembly to vote to rescind it was a major triumph. Could be the last one, maybe in the history of the General Assembly. So it's no longer on the books as a resolution, but nonetheless, it is a unique, singular event in the history of the United Nations. Number two, Israel is the only country in the world whose very existence is threatened. Now, today, when we think of Israel being threatened, who do we think of? We think of our good friend Ahmadinejad and the mullahs in Iran. But anyone who knows the history of the Jewish state knows that threats against Israel are as old as the Jewish state itself. Here's a series of quotes going back to the very beginning of the state. Azam Pasha, Secretary General of the Arab League. Look at the date. He's speaking May 15, 1948, the day after Israel declared itself a state. And of course, Israel, Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, called on all the surrounding nations to live in peace with the Jewish state. Here's the response. This will be a war of extermination, a momentous massacre, which will be spoken of like the Mongolian massacre in the Crusades. Nice tolerant language. Voice of Arab Radio, May 18, 1967, a few days after this, before the start of the Six-Day War. The sole method we shall apply against Israel is total war, which will result in the extermination of Zionist existence. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, his statement to the armed forces of Iran, July 1991. Israel is a malignant tumor in the region. It must be cut off. It must be eradicated. The next statement is interesting. It's from the Mubarak era Egypt, before that wonderful Arab Spring. Very sarcastic. But Egyptian press, remember, Egypt is a country that's had a peace treaty with Israel since 1979, and Egyptian press is state-controlled media. So this is Israel's southern neighbor that has a peace treaty with it. Look at this quote. Thanks to Hitler, of blessed memory, on behalf of the Palestinians, revenged in advance against the most vile criminals on the face of the earth. Although we do have a complaint against him, for his revenge on them was not enough. Unbelievable. And of course, our good friend Ahmadinejad, look what's in back of him in the picture. Know that this criminal and terrorist Zionist regime, which has years of plundering, aggression, and crime to its name, has come to the end of its road and will soon be wiped off. The Zionist regime has reached a total dead end. With God's grace, your wish will soon be realized, and this germ of corruption will be wiped off. So the point number one is that this is not a unique event of modern Iran threatening Israel. It's gone on since the beginning of the state. But what is also quite unusual is, remember, it is a violation. As a member state of the UN, you are not allowed to threaten another state with war or extermination. This is constantly happening, literally daily in Iran, and they're allowed to sit in the UN. Not only that, Ahmadinejad shows up every year to speak. But again, on the entire planet Earth, of all the countries and all the conflicts that are going on, none of them have to do with one country threatening to destroy another country. There are battles within countries, there are border disputes, but Israel is the only country of the 192 states that exist in the world that are members of the United Nations that is actually being threatened with extermination. Another unique aspect of Israel's position in the world. And you can see, by the way, look at these images here, of the level of hostility, and these are not just pictures of Arab states, directed at Israel by nice white with Nazis and apartheid and calling for the destruction of the Jewish state. Number 3, Israel is the only country in the world whose capital, which by the way I should add and I couldn't fit in the screen, whose capital is probably, I'm pretty sure, the oldest continuous capital of any people on the planet Earth. I mean, some Jews think Brooklyn is the capital of the Jewish people. Some will think Bathurst is something also. But even the Chinese, who are one of the few ancient people as old as us, they moved their capital around. Nanking to Peking, which is now Beijing. Okay, we have never had, even when we didn't have a state, we never had another religious political capital. So we're the people with the oldest continuous capital on the planet Earth, yet we have the only country in the world whose capital is not recognized by any other nation. Do you realize how outrageous that is? By the way, how diplomatically does one country recognize another country's capital as its capital? What do? Besides putting like a big star on the map, you put your embassy there. Okay? Well, let's see this, what this point is. This is adopted by the Security Council. Now, you guys clear the difference between Security Council resolutions and General Assembly resolutions? Thank God General Assembly resolutions are just resolutions that have no bite. Security Council resolutions are binding on all member states. So this is unlike that declaring Zionism as racism, which doesn't actually change anything on the ground. This had implications. Now, the background to this resolution is that after the 67 war, which Israel did not start, it got Jerusalem from the Jordanians. We all know the story. And then passed what was called the Basic Law, declaring that Jerusalem is the eternal, undivided capital of the Jewish people. We're not going to divide the city. So it's changing the status quo from what existed before, which the Security Council didn't like. So if you see what I wrote underlined in the red here, the Security Council affirms, look where it says number 2, that the enactment of the Basic Law by Israel constitutes a violation of international law, decides not to recognize the Basic Law as such, and such other actions by Israel, that as a result of this law, seek to alter the character and status of Jerusalem, and calls upon all member states to accept this decision. B, those states that have established diplomatic missions at Jerusalem to withdraw such missions from the holy city. By the way, prior to the resolution, there were only 16 countries that actually had embassies in Jerusalem. The rest of them had embassies where? In Tel Aviv. Or they had consulates maybe in Jerusalem. By 1986, no country maintained an embassy in Jerusalem. You guys realize how outrageous this is? That who gives any country the right to decide what another country's capital is? That we, with our eternal capital, the only people who have a capital not recognized by any country. Unique event in human history. Ironic, very bizarre. Now you should know that the biggest friend of Israel, by the way, is not the Israeli Knesset. You ever see that voting in the Knesset? There are parties in the Knesset which are absolutely traitorous. Unbelievable what goes on in the Knesset. The most pro-Israel body on the planet Earth is one could argue, Stephen Harper. They're the most pro-Israel prime minister on the planet by far. I'll trade him. We couldn't be president of America at the same time. I mean, kill two birds with one stone. But anyway, what's the most pro-Israel body? The U.S. Congress and Senate. Trust me, on votes about things in Israel, they're more pro-Israel and unified than the Knesset is. So look at this resolution here. Jerusalem Embassy Relocation Act. The act was adopted October 23, 1995 by both the Senate, look at the vote, 93 to 5, and the House, 374 to 37. Look what it says here, if you go down to where it says short title. This act is cited as the Jerusalem Embassy Act of 1995, and look what it says now. The United States maintains its embassy in the functioning capital of every country, except in the case of our democratic friend and strategic ally, the State of Israel. Here's the actual resolution, Section 3 timetable. The United States Embassy in Israel should be established in Jerusalem no later than May 31st, 1999. So whereas the Security Council says that round, the Congress and the Senate vote overwhelmingly to move the embassy back to Jerusalem. Has it happened, by the way? No. Matter of fact, the U.S., every president since Clinton, Bush, all of them have vetoed it, saying it endangers the U.S., the peace process, and U.S. strategic interests. U.S. maintains now 3 separate consulates in Jerusalem. Now, I'm American, I'm giving this talk, I say the U.S. has a deficit of like $16 trillion. Maybe it should close a couple down and save a few $1 million a year. Not that that would help the deficit retaining wall, which was to support a platform on which sat the holiest spot in the world with that gold dome. Not the actual building today, it's a Muslim holy site, but underneath that is called the foundation stone. That's the place where what happened in earliest Jewish history, proto-Jewish history? The binding of Isaac's story in Genesis chapter 22. Yeah, Kedat Yitzchak, as we say. From then onward in Jewish consciousness, this has always been the holiest spot in the world for the Jewish people, which is why this synagogue over here is facing Jerusalem. In the northern hemisphere, in the western hemisphere, synagogues face east. So do churches, by the way, for different reasons. Why do churches face east? Left over from paganism, the rising sun. Synagogues are facing Jerusalem, which means in England they're facing south, in South Africa they're facing north. In Australia, I don't know, they have to rotate because they're not sure which side of the date line they're on. But when you're in Israel, you're facing Jerusalem, and Jerusalem you're facing that spot over here, which is mentioned, by the way, Jerusalem is mentioned 667 times in the Hebrew Bible. We are Jerusalem-obsessed people. At a wedding, we break a glass, when you say, Imesh Kachet Yerushalayim, if I forget to go to Jerusalem. So we have this incredible holy site, which is our one and only real holy site, which all Jews throughout history venerated and prayed towards. We're the only people in the world who've given that site, which, by the way, today contains a Muslim holy site, but which thousands of years ago contained both the first and second temples, which stood on that site for about 830 years. That was a site that had a Jewish temple on it, but it's important to understand, with or without a building being on that site, the site is intrinsically holy. Whether there's Jews in the land of Israel, whether there's a Jewish state, whether there's a temple there, whether another religion occupies the site as it does today, it's still our one and only holy site. We mention it in our prayers. But even though we signed the Oslo Accords in 1993 with the Palestinian Authority, and part of the Oslo Agreement is that both sides will recognize each other's historic and religious claims to Israel in general and, of course, Jerusalem. Fast forward to 2012, there was not one Palestinian cleric, political leader, map, textbook, or anything that recognizes there was ever a Jewish presence in the land of Israel, much less in Jerusalem. This is a Zionist myth. The Jews are a foreign occupier. It's amazing how they've rewritten history. The Palestinians are the indigenous population. Here's a great example. This is Sheikh Qasser Raja Tanima. He is like the chief rabbi. Look at that kippah he's got on. He's like the chief, he's the head of the Waqf, the religious trust that maintains the Temple Mount. He's a Palestinian Authority employee. He's a classic kind of reaction to the notion of the Jewish place in Jerusalem. He says, Jerusalem is an Arab and Islamic city and always has been. Excavation work conducted by Israel since 1967 have failed to prove that Jews have had a history or presence in Jerusalem or that their ostensible temple ever existed. They've literally rewritten the books. So we are one of the oldest surviving nations on the planet Earth, with an unbroken connection to our land, are the only people in the world being told that we have no connection to our land, and our holy site was never ours to begin with. The funny part of this is that I got a hold of him. He works for the Supreme Muslim Council. I got a hold of their tourist guide from 1930, when it was British Mandatory Palestine. Here it is. That's it. You see, it says Al-Haram al-Sharif, which is the noble sanctuary, the Temple Mount. It says, you can see, Jerusalem 1930. It's going to be a little hard for you to read here, I'm afraid. But in page 3 of that guide, look what it says. I have to bend down to read it here. It says, it's talking about the Temple Mount. Its sanctity dates from the earliest, perhaps prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This, too, is the spot, according to universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Pretty funny, eh? Here are the people today saying there never was a Jewish presence. He did the old version of the tourist guide. But the point being, it's a unique situation. In 1967, after an amazing victory, Moshe Dayan, I'm going to get on that patch, that guy, gives the keys to the Temple Mount to the Muslim religious trust. And not only do they not say thank you, they say it was never ours. Again, it's a unique situation in the world. Okay, keep going. Israel is the only country in the world that is consistently singled out for criticism and condemnation. Now, we think of the United Nations, but it actually holds true for all of these NGOs. The level of hyper-criticism focused on the Jewish state is absolutely mind-blowing. Here, by the way, are a couple of examples of some really serious humanitarian crises in the last few decades. 1970, the Khmer Rouge. Remember those guys in Cambodia? They killed 2 million of their own people. 1990, 1995, civil war in Liberia. 800,000 people died, and half the population is exiled. Sierra Leone, 1991 to 1996, 50,000 dead and half the population displaced. The last one is the largest loss of human life since World War II. 1998, 5 countries invade the Congo. By 2001, an estimated 2.5 million people had died. It took until 2003 for the UN to send a serious French force. That, by the way, is an oxymoron. They probably landed and surrendered. Whatever. We can also add now today what's going on in Syria, which is unbelievable. Literally up to hundreds of people being killed a day in Syria. Can you imagine if Israel did that? Imagine if Israel had one airstrike on just part of Gaza Strip, random, like they're doing in Syria. Just bomb a whole town up the shopping area, a mosque, blow it up indiscriminately. Every single leftist would be going wild outside of every Israeli consulate in the world. Go find the Syrian embassy. Where is it located? In Ottawa or something? See how many people are standing outside it today protesting. 0, exactly. It's ridiculous. What did the UN do in all of these? These are real humanitarian crises and tragedies. What was the UN reaction? Nothing. Nothing. But when it comes to Israel, it's unbelievable. Again, if you can see the quote, I apologize, it's a little bit small writing. It says, between 2001 and September 2006, the UN General Assembly's plenary and main committees, not including the Human Rights Committee, adopted over 120 human rights resolutions focused on Israel. During that same period, only 10 resolutions were adopted by these same bodies regarding the situation in North Korea, Burma, and Sudan. It goes on to talk about emergency security council meetings. It's ridiculous how the world hyper-focuses on Israel. And graphically illustrate this, literally, there's a graph of UN resolutions against Israel versus everyone else in the world for the last 40 years. You guys realize there's far more resolutions condemning Israel than every other country in the world combined. It's insane. You know, every year the General Assembly has a day where they automatically pass 6 anti-Israel resolutions. It's automatically in the agenda for the last 30 years. Outrageous double standard. Israel is the only country in the world that is attacked and condemned for responding even when it responds with great restraint. This isn't the history of Israel's response to all of its wars, but we see this very graphically displayed in the last 2 conflicts. One of them being the Second Lebanon War, which was the summer of 2006. If you guys know your Middle East history, you know that the Palestinian, the PLO was thrown out of Jordan in the early 1970s, went into Lebanon, destabilized the country, caused a civil war, turned southern Lebanon, which borders Israel, into just a launching site for terrorism and rocket attacks. In 1982, when I first came to Israel, after multiple provocations, Israel went in. You guys know the first Lebanon War? You got to know your history. And they got stuck there for a long time, till 2000. Bad mistake. They had a buffer zone even. They occupied southern Lebanon. Then in 2008, Iraq pulled out. The UN actually said Israel has fulfilled all of its requirements vis-a-vis Lebanese territory. So what would happen? What should have happened? Lebanon itself should have then moved its army down to the border. The Lebanese government said, it's a unique event in history, we will not be Israel's police force. They refused to move their own army to the border. It was then taken over by Hezbollah, that guy on the upper right, Hassan Nasrallah, turned into a much more dangerous armed entity against Israel. In 2006, you guys remember this? Totally unprovoked, they fired rockets at 2 Israeli jeeps. This happened on Friday in the Gaza Strip. They hit a jeep with a rocket. They killed everyone in the first jeep. We now know they killed everyone in the second jeep. They then took 2 of the soldiers who apparently were either critically injured or dead already. They dragged their bodies across the border. To cover this escape, they launched a massive artillery barrage on all northern Israel. Remember, all this was unprovoked. Israel then went in and fought a 1-month-long, very poorly orchestrated war, Second Lebanon War. Okay? And the world went nuts. Now think about it, guys. If you fire across the border unprovoked at another country's military and then launch an artillery barrage according to all of international law, what is that by definition? It's an act of war. In Latin, it's called casus belli in international law. Look at the world's reaction. Unbelievable. And by the way, during that war, Hezbollah launched thousands of missiles indiscriminately on one-third of Israel. I assume none of you were in the country at the time. One-third of Israel was unoccupiable. We saw from the last presentation how small Israel is. You either have to leave, migrate south, or live in a bomb shelter for a month. Look at the world's reaction. It's unbelievable. This is the United Nations reaction to this unprovoked attack. And I'm sorry, I didn't feel quite to see here, so I'll read it to you. It says, Jan England, a top United Nations humanitarian official, said that Israel's response is a violation of international law. He was equally critical of Hezbollah and Hamas for abducting Israeli soldiers. Notice the language, equally critical. Okay. He also said that those who had seized Israeli soldiers and fired rockets into Israel from southern Lebanon bore their share of the blame. You guys see the language here? Imagine what happened December 7th, 1941. Who knows their history? Japanese sneak attack on Pearl Harbor. Imagine the UN gets together the next day and says the Japanese are equally responsible for starting the war in the Pacific. It was an unprovoked attack. Bore their share of the blame. This is Amnesty International. You see at the bottom, just reading the last couple lines. It says, the report also stated that for Israel to preserve the principle of proportionality, even if the destroyed targets could serve a dual purpose, and call for an independent and impartial inquiry by the UN to investigate war crimes by both Hezbollah and Israel. This is, again, a unique way that Israel's treated in the world. This notion of preserving the principle of proportionality. The other side during this conflict, where do they position all their missiles and rockets? By homes, schools, and mosques, deliberately hoping Israel would hit them and cause collateral damage. That's how they value life. And if you're going to be condemned Israel for striking those targets, and not only that, they're using something that's only been used against Israel. I've never seen this used anywhere else. It's called proportionality. Let me say this in simple English so you understand how ridiculous it is. The world is saying to Israel, in war, because of asymmetrical warfare, you guys know what that is? The other side is not an organized army. You're not allowed, Israel, to use all of your weaponry because it's not fair. That's what they're saying. They don't have Air Force, you're using your Air Force, it's unfair advantage. Has anyone ever heard of such a thing? In warfare, you don't use all your weapons? And by the way, Israel used them very descriptively, by the way. Finally, here's the European Union. It says the European Union is greatly concerned by the disproportionate use of force by Israel and Lebanon in response to attacks by Hezbollah on Israel. The presidency deplores the loss of civilian lives and destruction of civilian infrastructure. The imposition of an air and sea blockade on Lebanon cannot be justified. Another unique criteria used against Israel. In a time of war, you're not allowed to impede the free flow of weapons into your enemy's territory. You guys realize how weird this is? All of this stuff is unique in the way Israel is treated in a conflict that did not start. And of course, the better example is this one, this Operation Cast Lead, which took place between 2008-2009. In the winter, December, January. Remember what happened in Gaza? Israel pulled out in 2005. We'll look at that later. 2007, Hamas took it over and started launching missiles indiscriminately. This is still going on today. You guys following the news? What's happened? In the last 24 hours, it's turning into a situation where you very easily have a repeat of what happened with Cast Lead. The first kid killed in Cast Lead was my neighbor's son, by the way. He was in the commando unit of Golani. His name was Zvir Manuelov. But look at this guy, starting with Hamas taking over in 2005, 179 missiles, 946. For this entire period, about 1,000 missile and mortar rounds were lobbed indiscriminately into Israeli settlements bordering Gaza. Come on, if you fire a missile into another country's territory, according to international law, what is it, guys? Imagine if Canada decided, you never do this, but let's launch a couple missiles into Buffalo from Toronto. What would it be? Now, I like Canadians, you got a great army, all 6 soldiers are unbelievable. Now, the U.S. spends more defense budget than the next 15 countries in the world combined. You do not want to declare war on the U.S., guys. But imagine if Canada was theoretically to do that. We'll just launch 100 rockets into Buffalo and upstate New York. What would be, we'll throw a few into Detroit also, what would be, come on, within a week, there's no more Canada, guys, I'm sorry. The whole place has McDonald's and U.S. flags on it. And by the way, the world wouldn't say a word because you guys started it, tough nuggies, you launch rockets. But look what happens here. Completely ridiculous, lopsided. And of course, here's after Operation Cast Lead, which was fought much better, by the way. My son, my oldest son was a sniper and a medic in the paratroopers. Isn't that a great combination of jobs? Sniper and medic. He was here. He was a sniper in Cast Lead. He said, by the way, there's no one to shoot. He's there for a month. Everything was missiles and buildings being mined, with explosives, but there's actually no warfare going on because the other side refused to fight. It just sat behind buildings. You know the central command post where Hamas was during this war? Under the main hospital in Gaza. He put it deliberately knowing that Israel would never blow up the hospital. But here is the reaction of the United Recognizing also the Israeli siege imposed upon occupied Gaza Strip, which was not occupied, of course, including closure of border crossings, leads to disastrous humanitarian, economic, and environmental consequences. Strongly condemns the Israeli military attacks and operations in occupied Palestinian territory, particularly the recent ones in occupied Gaza Strip, which have resulted in the killing and injuring of thousands of Palestinian civilians, including a large number of women and children. This is all fallacious. We know none of this is true. Look at the last line here. And also condemns, look at, guys paying attention to this quote? And also condemns the firing of crude rockets on Israeli civilians. As a little side note, indiscriminate firing of rockets, we condemn that, but really Israel's all our fault. You guys realize how incredibly weird this is? The disasters, you still hear this language being used today. It's actually an incredible humanitarian tragedy. You guys notice the price of iPhones in Gaza is disproportionately high. That's their biggest humanitarian tragedy, is being smuggled through Egypt. They're very expensive. This is a humanitarian tragedy. 40,000 children die every day in Africa from diseases related to not having clean water. That's a humanitarian tragedy. Overpriced iPhones in Gaza? I don't think so. But this is what goes on. Here's one of the heroes, by the way, of the Goldstein Committee. Remember this? Ridiculous, totally found Israel guilty of everything. But the hero is this guy, Richard Kemp. He's a British colonel. He was the commander of NATO forces in Bosnia in the 90s. But look what he says, one of the few people to tell the truth here. He says, based on my knowledge and experience, I can say this. During Operation Cast Lead, Israel Defense Forces did more to safeguard the rights of civilians in a combat zone than any other army in the history of warfare. And he goes on to document how Israel would cancel attacks on positions because there were civilians around, that they would send text messages in advance to all the people that were going to hit your neighborhood, leave, drop leaflets from. Can you imagine anyone else doing this? We behave with greater mercy than any other country in warfare and get condemned more than anyone else. It is so outrageous, the double standard. We've gotten so used to it. But just let's pull back. I hold that if the world today, if we could be back in time, and the way the world treats Israel today would be used as a standard for how the world treated Jews during the Holocaust. This is how the newspaper headlines would look. Warsaw Ghetto uprising and overreaction. European leaders blame Jews for disproportionate response. Jewish resistance shatters hopes for a peaceful final solution. This is a fake New York Times from 1943. Okay, it's pretty funny when you read this and you laugh. This is not any different from how the world is reacting to Israel and treating Israel. It has gotten so outrageously ridiculous. We got to break this up a little humor. Look, this is from the Jerusalem Post, January 5th, 2011. This is not a fake headline. This is a real news story. Get a load of this one. Saudi media reported on Tuesday that a vulture tag with the words Tel Aviv University had been detained for being a Mossad spy. A report in the Saudi paper Al-Yam claimed that the vulture bearing a leg bracelet and transmitter, apparently placed by Israeli bird scientists studying migration patterns, had been found in a rural area of the country. The paper also said the flight appeared to be, quote, a Zionist plot, unquote. The report triggered a plethora of posts on Arabic websites claiming that, quote, Zionist, unquote, had trained birds for espionage. The South Saudi Sinai governor last month suggested that a shark that had killed a tourist in Sharm el-Sheikh had been intentionally released by the Mossad to sabotage tourism in the area. So now we release vultures to spy on Saudi Arabia and sharks to eat tourists. It's unbelievable. You're going to see my other t-shirt at the end of the presentation. But I think I'm going to make a new t-shirt that's going to look something like this. The sad part of all this, if they really believe this, they wouldn't mess with us. Would you mess with a country that controls wildlife, solar flares, seismic activity in the world's economy? It's unbelievable. By the way, the point is the accusations being leveled at Israel are no more rational than those in the 14th century. Kidnapping Christian babies, being in league with the devil, bringing the Black Death to the world, absolutely outrageous. Let's keep going. Israel is the only country in the world that is expected to and sends aid to an enemy during warfare. When it's actually fighting conflicts, it's sending aid to the enemy. And again, we see this. This is a great picture. This is Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas in Gaza. Here you have it is January 22nd, 2008, during the end of the conflict, cast led the Gaza Strip. This is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They close tons of humanitarian supplies in 2,281 trucks, 3,604,250 liters of fuel conveyed through Nahal Oz and Kerem Shalom. And by the way, a lot of Gaza's electricity comes directly from the Israel Power Company, which by the way they never paid for. They owe millions of shekels to Israel. So during the war, not only is Israel sending electricity into Gaza, it's sending trucks full of supplies and food, most of which, by the way, never ended up getting to the people, were hijacked by Hamas. Have you ever heard of such a thing? During warfare, you're sending supplies to the enemy. Again, our hero, Richard Kemp, you saw him before, the British officer, he says, during the conflict, the IDF allowed a huge amount of humanitarian aid into Gaza. To deliver aid virtually into the enemy's hands is, to the military tactician, normally quite unthinkable, but the IDF took on those risks. Again, unique. Towards the end here, Israel, the only country that is expected to and actually evicts its own citizens and destroys communities that it built. There's actually a bigger point to this, which is Israel the only country that when it wins wars that it doesn't start, that are wars for its own survival, it has to act like it lost. Like every country, you fight a war, the country that wins gets the territory. Especially if it's a war they didn't start. Israel is treated in a unique way that when it wins wars it didn't start for its survival, it has to give territory back, even though it endangers its own security. But of course, the specific example I'm talking about was in 2005. You guys remember these images? They're from Gaza. When Ariel Sharon, without consulting his own government, offered George Bush to do this. And when he offered it to his own government, of course, they rejected the notion of throwing Jews out of Gaza. He therefore split, he destroyed the Likud party temporarily, and founded Kadima to do this. They pulled out, and these are the most harrowing scenes. I lived in Israel 30 years. This is the most upsetting thing that I ever saw. Look at the pictures. Soldiers crying. It's unbelievable. They, by the way, rich North American Jews bought all the hothouses. If you've ever been to Israel, it's called the katif, the bug-free vegetables that are grown in special Israeli technology with ingenious making. Bug-free vegetables. So wealthy North American Jews bought the hothouses to give to the Palestinians. So they have some economic stuff to do when Israel pulled out. What happened in an hour of Israel leaving? They destroyed everything. And you can see what happens, okay? Within a year they had elections. Hamas won, declared a civil war on Fatah, killed or expelled all of them, and turned the entire thing into a giant, like, Islamic Nazi. Here, look what's going on here. Look at that picture from at the bottom of the little 2-year-old Palestinian kid dressed as a suicide bomber. Unbelievable. An entire little mini-state that glorifies martyrdom and suicide. I even have in my office a cartoon of 2 women, Arab women, when they're looking at a photo album, and one says, "This is my son Hakeem. He's going to be martyred in the fall." And the other one says, "They blow up so quickly, don't they?" It's unbelievable what this place has turned into. But a unique event. No country in the world does this. Israel bashing is the only cause that unites natural enemies and ideologies that oppose each other. This is a really interesting point that is lost on much of the world today. This is a picture from the first Durban conference. This is August 31st, 2001. This was a conference in Durban, South Africa against racism, which turned into the world's largest Israel-bashing fest in human history, where the entire conference got together and had a massive Bash Israel rally, where every delegate was given a copy of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. You guys know the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? It's the world's most famous forgery. It's the one written by the secret police of the Tsar of Russia in 1901 that claims that Jews control the world. Ridiculous book, by the way. Like, how do you know it's a forgery, besides you know it's a forgery? Anyone who thinks 10 rabbis in a room could have grown anything knows nothing about the Jewish people. But you see the irony of handing out a conference on racism, the most racist book ever written, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. But this spills over into the whole, especially Europe today, and the left. This is a chairman of the UK, United Kingdom, all-party parliamentary inquiry into anti-Semitism. This is published in The Guardian in 2006. The most worrying discovery of this inquiry is that anti-Jewish sentiment is entering the mainstream, appearing in everyday conversations of people who consider themselves neither racist nor prejudiced. Like, you'll never get these leftist liberals in Europe saying we have anything against Jews. It's just Israel we have a problem with. And if you look from the United Kingdom report again, it says the left in particular sees itself as immune from anti-Semitism, which it considers the exclusive province of the xenophobic right. The reality is it is now switched. By far, overwhelmingly the left is the #1 source for Israel-bashing anti-Semitism in the world today. The right has actually moved to be far more pro-Israel. I'm not talking about the extreme neo-Nazi right. An ironic twist of fate, if you told these guys they were anti-Semitic, they would be outraged. We have no problem with Jews, it's just Israel. By the way, guys, are you allowed to criticize Israel? The should remember, we saw a picture, Richard showed a picture of Sharansky. He had the 3 Ds. It's a great thing to remember, which is demonization, double standard, and delegitimization. When you turn Israel into the most evil state, vampire, blood-sucking, Jewish devils, okay, demonization, okay, delegitimization. When you say that Israel has no right to exist in any size or form, which, by the way, is amazing when I debate Palestinians on campuses, how many of them say it openly? And, of course, double standard. When you ignore all the other humanitarian crises in the world, the fact that Israel is surrounded by 22 totalitarian Arab states that have no human rights, treat women like garbage, no free press, no free economy, nothing. And you focus on Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East. Okay, that's illegitimate criticism of Israel. But that's what most people are guilty of. And you can see, by the way, look at these are all images. These are not Arabs. These are various European and other states calling for Israel's destruction and boycott. Guys, what do these people, these liberal left-wing Europeans, have in common with these people? I love that picture on the left. Smile. Did I take a picture? And that Bahraini shopping center. By the way, the lower left is 2 gay students being publicly hung in Tehran. Yet there's a whole organization called Queers for Palestine. It's unbelievable, which says Israel's guilty of pink washing because Israel claims it doesn't discriminate against homosexuals. They try and distract you from the horrible humanitarian tragedy of what they're doing to the Palestinians. Unbelievable. Right there, the picture's the one on the right. Can you see this one on that picture in the upper right-hand corner? That is a Persian, that's an Iranian woman who's blocked Ahmadinejad's car and is giving him the finger. And you know she's dead, by the way, of course. You can believe after that one. But what do these people have in common? There's only one cause in the world in which you can get in one room all agreeing. A feminist, a gay activist, an extreme leftist, a super right-wing, and a radical Islamic whatever. In one room, what's that one cause? Bashing Israel. Bashing Israel. And last but not least, Jews are the only people in the world who are held responsible for what their co-religionists do. Simply put, what happens in Israel seems to affect Jews around the world. And again, if you look at Dennis Prager and Joseph Telushkin in their book, Why the Jews, they say that anti-Zionism is unique in only one way. It's the first form of Jew hatred to deny that it hates Jews. Again, all of these intellectuals and people calling for boycotts would never admit they have anything against Israel. But notice what's very scary about the image here. What's this, guys? What's the word about this image in the very upsetting? The association of what with Jews? A swastika. Can you think of anything more perverse? Taking the 6 lines of the Star of David and turning it into the 6 lines of the swastika. It's ridiculous. Twisting around. And notice what's also very scary about this image is what? The religious image. Notice the coming together of anti-Israel with Jewish symbolism. What's the guy wearing? A talit. Martin Luther King saw this already in the 60s. He said, when people criticize Zionists, they mean Jews are talking anti-Semitism. And this is a State Department report on anti-Semitism in 2006. It says, frequently no distinction is made between Zionists and Jews, regardless of whether or not the Jews are Israelis or whether or not the Jews support the policies of Israel. The 2 terms often are used interchangeably. Such anti-Zionist discourse often employs classic demonic stereotypes of Jews. So despite this idea that it's really only Israel, if you look at these cartoons that are coming out, notice, okay, upper left-hand corner, the guy looks like, obviously, Orthodox Jew. Notice the guy in the lower left-hand corner. He's got a beard and he's got a kippah on. Okay, all this convergence. And of course, this is a great understatement here. This is another European Union report on anti-Semitism from 2001-2005. There has been some evidence to support the view that there is some link between the number of reported anti-Semitic incidents and the political situation in the Middle East. I hope they didn't spend a lot of money to figure that one out. Do you guys remember what's going on around the world during Operation Cast Lead? We have a video you can see on YouTube. It's done by a guy by the name of Tom Slenta, who's a Christian, pro-Israel Christian activist. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, hardly a bastion of radical Islam. During Cast Lead, December 2008, get to see it. On one side of the street, there's like 50 Jews and right-wing Christians doing a pro-Israel rally. Across the street are about 15 Muslims, separated by the Fort Lauderdale police, yelling at each other. Fast forwarding, like 5 hours later, there's now 250 Muslims screaming, go to the ovens, go to the gas chambers, death to the Jews, and they try and cross the street to kill the Jews, and the police have to race in and separate them. So any of that illusion that has something to do with Israel, there's an absolute direct connection. What happens to Israel, all Jews are held responsible for in the world. It's a propaganda. This is not Palestinian propaganda, by the way. This is a hadith. This is sacred Islamic texts, like their Midrash. Look what it says. This is being read on Palestinian TV in 2001. And it is given, the day of resurrection will not arrive until the Muslims make war against the Jews and kill them. And until a Jew hiding behind a rock in a tree, and a rock in a tree will say, O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. This hadith clarifies to us the characteristics of the campaign between us and the Jews. The tree and the rock do not say, O Palestinian, O Arab, O resident of the Middle East. Rather they say, O Muslim servant of Allah. Now Dr. Mahmoud Mahdi, who's saying this quote, is using it to show that it's not a Palestinian thing, it's an Islamic thing. But what's the word that should be scary to all of us, guys? You notice it doesn't say, there is a Zionist, there is a Likud supporter, there is a settler. What's the word being used over and over again in this quote? Jew, 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 Jew. And this is exactly the point. We have to recognize in terms of history, when they come against the Jewish people, it doesn't make a difference whether they're Nazis or communists or radical Islamists. They don't care whether you're religious or secular, right-wing or left-wing, live in Israel, don't. They come after all the Jews equally. They don't discriminate. When it comes to Auschwitz, all Jews go together. Dennis Prager, Joseph Teluskin, in the end of their updated version of this book I was telling them about, Why the Jews, they sum up the situation in the world as follows, and it's pretty scary. They say, this is the most frightening time for Jews since the Holocaust. From the Jews' perspective, the world can be divided into three kinds of countries. Those that hate Jews and want them dead, those that ignore this hatred and aid the haters, and America. Just one generation after nearly 7 out of 10 Jews in Europe were murdered, the remnant of Jews in the Jersey-sized Jewish state is threatened with annihilation. As in 1938, the world seems to be divided between those nations that were about to murder Jews and those that would let it happen. By the way, I would add one thing. He didn't write this quote. Stephen Harper was prime minister, so now we can put Canada in there. I don't know if he's out of power, that would remain that way. The current situation. But today, guys, think about what's the Jewish population of Israel? No, it's about 6 today. It's almost exactly the same number of people who were killed in the Holocaust between 1939 and 1945. What's the whole, when they think about the Holocaust in Israel, what's the motto? Never again. Israel will never allow it. Arguably, you look at the situation, Israel now sits with a neighbor who's trying to go nuclear. The world is doing very little to stop it. Some sanctions here and there. Iran talks and, negotiates and goes forward with this plan. We find ourselves basically less than 70 years after the destruction of 70% of the Jews in Europe, pretty much almost back in the same situation we were then, despite the notion that, Zionism would aid solid anti-Semitism, and a Jewish state would ensure that such a thing would never happen again. It seems right over the horizon. It's pretty scary. And the world's treatment of Israel, when we're facing such incredible threats, outrageous. So what is really going on here? We look at all this stuff together, and I can do 10 more of them. I don't want to, we're out of time. There's already enough. Isn't it unbelievable? Remember the story of the emperor, the emperor's wearing no clothes, and no one seems to be saying it? We see all these things one at a time. We see them all together. It is outrageous. The double standard is absolutely outrageous. So we can either stop here and leave you all depressed, like there's no hope, they're all turning against us. But I want to flip it over in the last couple of minutes, and let's look at what's really going on here. First of all, why am I not depressed by this stuff? Besides that Golda Meir quote that Jews can't afford to be pessimistic. You guys think this is the first time this ever happened to us, the Jewish people, that tried to kill us? Every year at Passover, we lift up a cup and we say the Hisha Amda, which is what? In every generation they try and destroy us, but thank God God saves us. Everyone's tried to destroy us. This point is so important, I made a t-shirt out of it. Here's my t-shirt. It says civilizations, nations, and empires. This is not the full list. It takes like 8 shirts to do the full list. But it says civilizations, nations, and empires have tried to destroy the Jewish people and their status today. Ancient Egypt, gone. Philistines, gone. Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and Roman empires, gone, 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 gone. Byzantine Empire, gone. Crusaders, gone. Spanish Empire, gone. Nazi Germany, gone. Soviet Union, gone. Iran with 3 question marks. And then it says the Jewish people, the smallest of nations, with a friend in the highest of places, so be nice. What do you think? 1 for every member of the UN General Assembly, and 2 for Ahmadinejad? 1 in black and 1 in white? By the way, it's pretty funny. The guy who makes these shirts for me in Netanya, T-Max, he sells like 4,000 a year. Most Jews are afraid to wear that shirt. I can't wear it, they'll kill me. I said, oh, Babylonian, he's gone. Just don't wear it in Tehran, you'll be fine. You know who buys 90% of these shirts and wears them? Right-wing evangelical Christians buy week, they send me photographs on my Facebook site or on my website. Look, I'm wearing a t-shirt, you know? The reason, number one, I'm not depressed is, okay, long after Ahmadinejad is gone, we will be here. It doesn't mean we get complacent, by the way. It doesn't mean they're real threats. But he's far from the first person to threaten us with extermination. But not only that, guys, when you put all this together, you can see clearly it's way too weird. As a matter of fact, I would say it's supernatural. And supernatural means what, guys? When you see supernatural going on, it means that something else is happening higher up there. Guys, let's be really clear. Israel bashing is the final form anti-Semitism is taking on the planet Earth. It is just as irrational as every other accusation leveled against the Jewish people in human history. But rather than spending time, I'm not saying we should be proactive for Israel. Do not get me wrong. We have to be active in any way we can. Camera, honest reporting, memory, anything you can do, by all means. We don't believe in miracles in Judaism. But we have to appreciate if this is ultimately really just a form of anti-Semitism, that if we understand what drives anti-Semitism, then we'll know what the real solution is. Because everything else we're doing for pro-Israel activism is just dealing with the symptoms of a deeper disease. So allow me just to do a couple minutes of the traditional Jewish understanding of what drives anti-Semitism, not from Jewish sources, through the words of the greatest of modern Jew hater, Adolf Hitler, who A, was not crazy. Crazy people don't do what Hitler did. Take the most sophisticated country on the planet Earth, Germany, technologically, in every way, did control and conquer Europe in 2 years. He's also incredibly ideologically consistent, Hitler. But look what Hitler says about the Jews. He says the Ten Commandments have lost their validity. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It is a blemish like circumcision. You guys appreciate this is the greatest backhanded compliment ever given to the Jewish people? Who else, by the way, was against circumcision in Jewish history, in world history? Who attacked it first? Who went to a war for it? Who caused the first religious ideological conflict in human history? I'll give you a hint. It's the next holiday coming up. Hanukkah. The Greeks were pagans. It was a war not against Jews. It was a war against Judaism. It was an ideological struggle. And if you don't think this is obvious enough, look at the words of the Hitler Youth song. Unbelievable. We are the joyous Hitler Youth who don't need any Christian virtue. Our leader is our Savior. The Pope and Rabbi shall be gone. And the bottom line is by far the most important. We want to be pagans once again. The great Jewish struggle in history is we have been dragging the world kicking and screaming for thousands of years toward a vision of spirituality and morality based on relationship with one God. And throughout history, different people rise up in different ways to challenge that. Whether it's Hanukkah or the Holocaust or Israel bashing today, it's ultimately the exact same conflict. Israel represents the Jewish people in its greatest form. Our greatest potential is being in our own state and creating a nation that's a light to nations. Prager and Toulouse, at the end of their book, they sum it up beautifully. From its earliest days, the raison d'etre, you guys speak French, right? So you know what that means. At least you learned it in school. The reason for being of Judaism has been to change the world for the better. This attempt to change the world, to challenge the gods, religious or secular, of the societies around them, and to make demands, moral demands upon others, has constantly been a source of tension between Jews and non-Jews. We now understand why so many non-Jews have regarded the mere existence of Israel, the mere existence of Jews, no matter how few, as terribly threatening. The mere existence of Jews with their different values and allegiances constitute a threat to the prevailing order. In my opinion, as a historian and a rabbi, this quote is the single best holistic explanation of what drives all anti-Semitism in human history. And Israel bashing is just the final form it takes, because at a very deep, even subconscious level, the world recognizes that our mission in this world, guys, is to not live scattered around the world, but to come together as a unique nation in the land of Israel and finish the job that Abraham started thousands of years ago. It was best said in the Bible itself, and the Bible usually says it best. Bilam, the famous non-Jewish prophet, hired to curse us, ends up giving us beautiful blessings. One of them, he says, is one of the great truisms of being Jewish. He says, we are an am she'ishtam levado, a nation that dwells alone and is not reckoned amongst the nations. Guys, I am not a prophet. If I was, I'd be working in the stock exchange. But I'll make a prediction which I can guarantee you can test. Not because I'm so smart. It's because it's repeated over and over again in the Bible. We Jews will never be allowed to be like anyone else, and certainly not in a Jewish state. No way. And even though the ridiculous double standard of the world drives us crazy, like the French are telling us how to behave in Israel, in New York York, we say things like the Statue of Liberty had both hands up, but left Paris. Come on, give me a break. Even though it drives us crazy, this is the way it has to be. Because being Jewish might not be comfortable, but it's always meaningful. And to go back to that first statement we said at the very beginning of Herzl, an early Zionist, and don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Zionist, okay? All my kids served in combat units, I did. I have a triple barbecue on Independence Day. It's not the issue. But the notion that we're going to have a Jewish state, like it says in Hatikva, you guys know the words of Hatikva? Li'ot al chofshi be'artzeinu. To be a free people in our land, to be like anyone else, we will never be allowed to be like anyone else. And anti-Semitism is always a wake-up call to the Jewish people individually, and Israel bashing collectively. We're being told we cannot disappear and be like anyone else. Shimon Peres wrote a book in 1993 when Oslo Accords were signed. He's the driving force behind the Oslo peace process. It was called The New Middle East. You read this book today, you would almost cry or laugh at the same time. He talks about now we have peace with the Palestinians, the borders are going to come down. It's going to be like the European Union. Unified electric grid, high-speed trains running from Jerusalem to Damascus. We're going to combine the shekel and the drachma. We'll have the drekel, we'll have like a currency like the... Better not have unified currency. 2 years later, they started blowing themselves up in Jerusalem. And Oleg, this extreme right-wing Russian cartoonist, he said, here, Shimon Peres is in the Middle East. He had a bucket floating out in the Mediterranean with Shimon Peres sitting in it and said, Israel, and the coast of Israel said Palestine. The biggest mistake we can make is to think that we have to be like everyone else. It's not our goal. We're not supposed to be superior. We're just supposed to be different. Our goal is not to be like everyone else, but to be a holy nation and a value that embodies values. And just as, by the way, you can tell in history how countries are doing by how they treat their Jews, you can tell how the world's doing by how it treats Israel. We're the litmus test for how the world behaves. Because guys who can test us like gravity, when evil comes into the world, it will target Jews first within a country, and when evil states come into the world, go read George Gilder's book, The Israel Test. It will target Israel, the Jewish state, first. Put it all together, guys. If you understand what's going on, it's supernatural, it's from above. We're getting a very heavy message here. We're entering very difficult times. 2013, I hold, is the most critical years in human history coming up right now. We face tremendous threats. We have to be proactive for Israel. We have to work on Jewish unity. There are hundreds of millions of people who want us dead, and we are sitting here fighting amongst each other, arguing. Trust me, if we don't want to get along and work together, they're just going to remind us. We don't care what you think. We'll think it collectively. We have to work on Jewish unity. But most importantly, we have to remember this is an ideological struggle against the value that we've been trying to bring into the world. There's only one solution to this conflict. Yes, be proactive for Israel, but bottom line, we have to be proactive for Judaism first. Jews for Judaism make the best people for the world. And the Jewish state is supposed to embody something differently. And when we come together as a nation, as proud Jews, focusing that amazing energy on creating a Jewish people and a Jewish state, which is a model for the rest of the world, then and only then, guys, I promise you, we'll have an end to the conflict with Israel, peace in the Middle East, and peace for the whole human race. And that should come soon in our days. And thank you very much. I'm happy to take for a couple minutes. By the way, outside I didn't bring books with me because I just couldn't slap them here. I came for a way. But I have some of my CDs, if anyone's interested, audio and movies, and also my cards if you want to get them. By all means, and access to H Audio if you want to download some of the audio there. I'm happy to entertain a couple questions. Okay, for 5 minutes max. Yeah.
So, yes, we will specific. With our kids, one of the things that they say about talking about, you think it's not perfect, and like your presentation is very violent and it should be, and they, make mistakes we never made, I'm thinking of that book, for example, under the I Shall Not Hate, Whaler.
I don't know the book.
This guy, so-called Palestinian doctor talks about his three daughters and niece were killed during that.
Right, I must remember to cast that, yeah.
And they did nothing, but he still doesn't hate us. But anyway, this kind of like it's stuff like that goes on, but we probably covered up. We don't use it. I think it's very soldiers are like anybody else. Explain what your response is.
So first of all, Israel doesn't cover anything up. If you live in Israel, you should have always investigating and finding soldiers and border police guilty of offenses and abuse and brutality is not true. So Israel, no one says Israel's perfect. I'm saying just treat Israel the same way we treat everyone else. If you look at the uniform standard throughout the world, well, Israel's not perfect. It behaves better than anyone else. Better than the U.S. in warfare, better than Canada, better than anyone. In the most speak here? Soldiers speak? Does he come to Toronto? The guy's unbelievable. He's a friend of mine. He's unbelievable. You just hear, Israeli soldiers are not these monsters. They're my kids, That's the thing. So we have to have an objective, realistic view of what Israel's about. No one says it's a perfect country. There's plenty of problems. We got a lot to be proud of. And by the way, you should all see the movie. It's called Israel Inside. I'm sending a copy to this school here. We're so busy focusing on all that, the violence and the peace process. We don't realize what an absolutely unbelievable country it is in terms of how disproportionately it contributes in terms of medicine and science and technology and agriculture to the world. Is so far above any other country on planet Earth in a positive way. And no one looks at that because they're so busy dealing with the survival issues and the Palestinian conflict. Go read the book, The Israel Test. Yeah.
What do you see as the repercussions from the election of Obama?
What do I see as the repercussions from the elections of Obama? I don't know. On one hand, during the first Obama administration, Obama is not a huge threat to Israel, in my opinion. Something out of Bibi Netanyahu's. Have a very difficult relationship. Well, I have to say, strategic cooperation between Israel and America in that period was actually very good. My only fear is if it gets to the point where Israel has to act with Iran, really big decisions need to be made. I'm not at all convinced that Obama's going to come back for Israel. I mean, I'm not freaking out because the real pro-Israel aspect of American politics is not the president, it's the Congress and the Senate. And there's a tremendous amount of grassroots support. So that if he is free to, cause massive damage to the relationship, I'm not so sure, but hopefully it'll maintain a good relationship. But my feeling is that Bibi Netanyahu will be reelected, and they don't get along, to say the least. And it could have negative repercussions if something were to really reach a crisis point in the Middle East. We have to see. Anyone else? Yeah.
Why is Israel so dependent on what America says or does or doesn't do? Is there ever going to be a time where we have an Israeli leader who stands up and goes, our doors are closed, I don't care what your opinion is, here's what we're doing, I don't care about your two-state anymore, it's not happening, here's what we're doing here, that's it, end of story. What could possibly anybody do about that?
Well, that leader will be Mashiach, by the way. Until that time, no. The Israeli relationship with America is more complicated than any relationship. It's got more strings attached than Pinocchio. Okay, Israel's not really an independent state. It is foreign policy and everything. It has to always be looking over its shoulder at what the United States allow Israel to do. And the foreign aid that Israel gets, albeit the most of any country, it's like $3.5 billion in military and other aid. While it's often, some of it is quite useful, it has a lot of strings attached to it. And in my opinion, personally, I would love to see Israel not get foreign aid in the United States. I think it would be much better for the relationship not to be a handout relationship. Israel could interact with America more as a partner as opposed to being a schnorrer. So it's complicated. But I have to say, to be fair, America's really consistently, Stephen Harper aside, I keep saying it, but America consistently in every administration is the one country that stands between Israel and between political isolation in the world. If you include Micronesia and the Marshall Islands also. They always vote for Israel because these little two little islands, they vote like America. But the scary thing is if America would just go neutral on Israel, Israel would find itself completely isolated in the world, surrounded by either hostile states or like the European states, which would just abstain, which is what Europeans like to do today. They show concern and they abstain. You guys remember the threat levels? Canada threat levels? America used to have threat levels, green, yellow, orange, red. You should announce it in the airport, the threat level is orange. We're going to check your Coca-Cola now. That's ridiculous. So, France has threat levels. America's are green, yellow, orange, red. The French will run, hide, surrender, collaborate. So unfortunately, that's what's going on in Europe. We find ourselves in a very difficult situation where we really have very few friends in this world anymore. I'll take one more question from Mike over here, and then I'm happy to answer more questions, but I'll let you guys go because it's already 1 o'clock. Yeah.
I'm going to take my question to go to further.
Okay.
So, I once heard your lecture on the Islamism moving out and taking over, and then it's back. It seems like Islamism is now moving out in all directions, including in North America. How do you see this? Who's stopping your...
Look, the bottom line is the question is, once heard you talk on the spread of Islam in the world. Islam is a very aggressive expansionist ideology. That it wants to do that, it's Islam's business. The problem is that the jihadi Muslims yelling Allahu Akbar. Today, Islam is just as jihadi, even more so than it was 30 years ago, and they're yelling Allahu Akbar and trying to jumpstart the jihad in any way they can, undermining countries, using their democracies against themselves to openly, all these people, countries that are openly, traitors to the countries that are tolerating them, while Europe especially is just, I surrender. I wish Europe would be a little more Christian and a little more for its ideology that made Europe great, and a little less PC. It would be a lot more stable world, because unfortunately Islam is graduating to a point where it will start to take over European states within the century, in the next few decades. It is, in my opinion, no question, the greatest threat that Western civilization has possibly ever faced, that people seem to be asleep. And when you say anything about it, you're accused of being a racist, no matter how tolerant and trying to go the middle path. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be happy to go outside.
Okay, no comment, thank you. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming and for staying and for being a part of this. I want to thank Rabbi Strobler and Nicole from Shar Shemayim for allowing us to use the space here. CEJA, NCSY Canada, and all the students that came today. Mara Hart and the great volunteers that she brought. David Gordon from the Jewish Tribune, who has an awesome podcast. If you haven't heard it, it's called Insights and Influence on landmarkreport.com. Asia Torah, Village School, Jewish Family Institute, Rabbi Rafi Livner, Shir Shapiro in the house, Bristol Jewish Center, Jason for doing all of our audio and doing such a great job, and all of our amazing volunteers that came out, and of course all of our presenters, Mike Fagelman from Honest Reporting, Richard Bass from the Judd Institute, and of course Rabbi Ken Spiro from Asia Torah. If you're ever looking for a follow-up course, Richard Bass is actually going to be giving a follow-up 3-week course. There's a flyer out in the lobby. That is a course that will give you all of this information and more, that sets you up to go forward with everything that you guys learned today. The videos for this I am hoping to have up on the website, which is www.israelleader.org. I'm going to load it on YouTube and embed it onto the site so that you guys will be able to see it and if you want to spread it. And just stay tuned. Hopefully we'll do something again soon. Thank you very much for coming.